Hello and welcome to another episode of the Straight Talk by Small Business podcast. This is Salim Omar. We have an amazing guest. His name is Tom Schwab. Tom, welcome.
I am thrilled to be here, Salim.
That's awesome. Tom knows how to build an online business. Marketing at its heart is starting a conversation with someone who could be an ideal customer. Drawing on his engineering, corporate, and e commerce inbound marketing experience, Tom helps thought leaders, coaches, authors, speakers, emerging brands, businesses get featured on leading podcasts with that their ideal customers are already listening to. Then he helps to turn listeners into customers. He's the author of the podcast Guest Profits, Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy, and founder of the Interview Valet, category king of podcast interview marketing. Tom, let's dive in. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and the reason I'm looking forward to this conversation is because it's going to help our listener grow their top line. It's going to help them get in front of the right people and build relationships and then turn those relationships into customers, clients, patients. So I'm super excited about the topic. Now, why is leveraging other people's platforms, OPP, more valuable than other people's money?
Right. And so I'm an engineer by degree, right? So I always look at it and say, how can you get the maximum output with the minimum input? And like you said, we're optimizing here for sales. And I would say we're optimizing even more for that for profits, right? And we get profits when we serve the right people and they value what we do. So today, and when I first made this claim, interest rates were a fraction of what they are right now. But I'll still claim that other people's audiences are more powerful than other people's money, right? Because you can get results so much quicker from tapping in to an existing audience. And let me give you an example on this, Salim. There was a lady that had a company, right? Sarah Blakely had a company called Spanx, and she
Heard the
sold it. It
name.
was a billion dollar company, right?
Mhm.
Well, she was invited on Oprah's show. And think about it. What if Oprah would have said, Sarah, I love what you're doing. I'm going to give you $1 million. It's a gift, or pay it back to me whenever you want. I'm sure she wouldn't have said
Mhm.
no. But if she said, you can take the $1 million, or you can go on my show and talk to my
Mhm.
audience. You can have 45 minutes talking to my audience. You know which one she would have taken. And that's really how
Mhm.
she leveraged that to launch the entire company. And so this idea of, yes, you can build your own platform and lots of people do it, right? But that's a long process. And if there's someone that already has your audience, better to leverage their audience with a
Mm.
partnership, with a cross promotion, with being on their stage. And you think about this, it's nothing new, right? People have been doing it on newspapers, getting in newspapers people are reading, or on television, or going to live events, right? If somebody has a live event, you want to speak at that if your ideal customers are there. And really, that's what we're doing on podcast interviews, right? It's getting in front of people that already are there, and you get that know, like, and trust from other people's audiences. It's a time-tested manner. It's a strategy that's been used, but it's also can be supercharged now with digital marketing.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'm quite, kind of surprised when, a lot of business owners, we overlook what you just shared, leveraging other people's platforms. And we're always looking for that new shiny marketing thing that's going to bring in the clients and customers. And I don't know why it is, but we overlook the most effective way, which is joint venturing. It's getting on other people's platforms. It's tapping into a relationship that someone has spent money and time developing. And we're coming in and we're becoming part of that relationship and
And
leveraging that.
Salim, you use the word effective. And I think that's one of the things I love about what you're teaching. It's about being effective, right? And effective means that you get sales and profits, right? Being efficient just means you're doing a lot of things, being busy, right? And I really believe today that we're getting more efficient at things that are less effective, right? In the time you and I are talking to right now, we both could have sent a million emails. Doesn't mean those emails would have done anything. So I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of marketing hype out there telling us to
Mm,
do more, more, more. Um, there's a lot of fear of missing out. While other people's are using these platforms, I need to be everywhere. As a
mm,
small business, we can't be everywhere, right? There's limitations that we have, and we need to make sure that we're at the places our clients are, where they're making buying decisions, and that everything we do is effective.
mm. Do you kind of see that when you talk to lots of businesses, business owners, do you see that like digital marketing getting in the way, it's destroying businesses? Because people have this thing of how many likes can I get and how many followers I can get, and they're really kind of focusing on that rather than the relationships.
Yes, and I think the marketing ecosphere here sets us up for that too, right? They're always selling us the new and the shiny. And, especially as business owners, we often go after those things, you know, but we have to ask ourselves, are my clients there? Will I get business from it? I'll give you an example here. Thread came out within the last month or two, right? And that was Facebook's answer to Twitter, now called X, right? And I know a lot of other business owners that spend the entire week building up their thread, and these were the same people that built up their clubhouse 2 years ago. And they spent all of this time trying to be first on a platform that their clients weren't even there yet. And it's fun,
Mm,
it's sexy, it sort of gives you that
mm,
dopamine hit of, wow,
mm,
I'm really doing a lot, right? There's a lot of activity. But at the end of the day, my bank has never been impressed by my activity or the amount of Facebook likes I have, or even more leads, right? They want to know how many people you're serving, how many people are happy with what you do, because they can read that from the profit and loss statement there.
mm. How does that fit in? I mean, you make a statement, reviewing your material, and the statement you make is obscurity, every business's biggest problem. How does a business owner get out there and become known if you're not a fan of digital marketing and you feel like it's destroying a business?
Well, let's walk it back, that I believe that every business owner's biggest problem is obscurity, right? Whether or
Mm,
not you were on version 1.0 or 20.0 of your business, there's somebody right now that's praying for your solution. They'd happily hire you. They just don't know you exist. And in
mhm.
the old days, when people had to drive to work with you, you had a limited number of customers. Today, we've got a glut of customers, potential customers, but it's the question of how you can get known by them. And once again, I think we have this view in marketing of more, 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 right? I need to be everywhere. Um, and you don't need to be known by everyone. You just need to know by your ideal customers. So that could be using other people's audiences. It could be targeting where those people are. It's niching down, right? As an accountant, you don't want to talk with every business out there, right? Google and Facebook will not hire you as an accountant, right? So you've got to target down that into the
Mhm.
people that you can serve. And I think it's being very, very clear on that. And
Mm,
in your marketing, being very clear of, this is who I am, this is who I help, and this is what I
mm,
do, because it's important to attract the right people, but also repel the wrong people. And I don't mean that they're bad people. It's just that you're not set to work with them, right? And that's not where you focus in on. And I think that's where, when we get clear with what we do, and when we talk about that, our leads, people can be clear whether or not they resonate with us, and even referrals, right? If I know exactly what you do and who your ideal client is, it's a whole lot easier for me to refer someone to you.
Yeah, yeah. Why are you a big fan of podcasts? Appearing, when it comes to other people's, appearing on other people's platforms and using podcasting as a way to grow a business.
Um, it really comes from my experience with my last business. My last business was HubSpot's first e-commerce case study, and we used guest blogging to get that know, like, and trust. And that worked
Mm,
20 years ago, right? Blogs don't work nearly as well. So about 10 years ago, I started to test, could you use podcast interviews that way? And it worked so great. Podcast interviews convert 25 times better than blogs. The data shows that. And so for me, as a owner, as a founder of a company, I love talking about my business, right? People always love talking about their kids and their business. And for
mm,
founders and business owners, those are the same things, right?
mm,
So we love talking about and evangelizing for our category, for our customers, for our business. So it's a very natural thing to do. And
mm,
here I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, right? There's not that many of my customers right around me. But with podcasting, we can use this medium to talk with people, around the country, around the world, and throughout time, right? If we were talking, you and I on a stage at a big conference, right? If somebody was at that conference, they'd never hear us talk. Maybe if they got up to answer their phone, they'd never hear us. But with podcasting, it goes throughout time. People can listen to it when they want, where they want. And now you can repurpose that and get a month's worth of content out of every
mm.
podcast interview, right? Turn it into blogs, social media posts, all of those things just from, a 20 or 30-minute conversation.
Hmm. And are there any categories? I mean, can anyone in any industry use podcasts as a way to grow their business?
I believe they can, but there's different ways to do it, right? So for podcast interview marketing, there's a few things that we see. The more it is a relationship sale, the better it will work, right? If you're just selling transactions and nobody needs to know who you are, you
Hmm.
probably don't need that relationship sale of a podcast.
Hmm.
The other thing too is the bigger your geography that you can service, the better, right? So if you're only serving people, in the greater Kalamazoo area, there's probably not a reason for you to go on national podcasts and talk about that, right? Because
Mm,
99% of the people that would come and be leads, you couldn't
right.
service. So on those, I think it's much better to do a local podcast where you get known in that geography.
Mm,
We do a lot of nonfiction books, especially where there's a business behind it. Those have worked very well. And over the last 9 years, we've seen that fiction books don't work nearly as well off of podcasts or podcast interviews, right? I don't have to know who the author is in order to buy a fiction book. And so that medium doesn't seem like it works nearly as well.
mhm, mhm. Great. So the strategy changes. It can work for most industries, most businesses, and if and the strategy would change in how you go about doing the podcast, national, local.
Correct. And a lot of people will even say, should you be a guest or a host? Right. And I don't think it's an either or. I think it really depends on what your goals are, right? It's almost like Uber, right? Should you be an Uber driver or an Uber passenger? Same platform. What are your goals? So being a
Mm,
guest is a great way to go out there and get more exposure, to get new leads, to get new backlinks, to get new social media followers. Now, if you already have an established audience, being a podcast host is a great way to nurture your current leads, to nurture your current customers. So I don't think it's a one or the other. It's
right.
really what your goals are. And then just know also that a podcast is a big commitment, right? Salim,
Mm,
anybody that says doing a podcast is easy has never done it or never done it well, right?
mm,
There's a lot of work that goes into it. And
right.
that's the reason why 80% of podcasts that fail within the first 10 episodes. So being a guest is a much easier way to dip your toe into it
Right.
than starting your own show.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. This is so good, Tom, and we are got a few minutes, and I want to kind of shift gears and talk about your experiences being in business. And you've come from, a marketing background, and e-commerce. You've done e-commerce, uh, and you're an engineer by education. Um, the question I would have for you is, what are some one or two things that you feel people need to hear? Maybe it's lessons, or it's things, mistakes that people make, or they don't, they underestimate uh, the importance of something. What are those?
I think, wherever you start out in life sort of dictates how you look at the world, right? Accountants see the world as accountants. Engineers see it through an engineering viewpoint. And so I've always
Mm,
looked at business that way too. I ran nuclear power plants in the Navy when I was in my 20s. And
mm,
I'm always amazed when I hear business owners say, well, you don't understand my business. It's too complicated. I could never have somebody else do that for me, or I could never teach it to anyone. And I scratch my head and say, there's 20-year-olds that are high school educated, very smart, very motivated, that are running nuclear power plants right now. If they can do that, we can systematize our businesses. And the
mm,
problem is, it's not that they can't learn it. It's that we don't know it well enough and have thought through it well enough to systematize and do it that way.
mm,
So I always challenge myself and challenge others on that, because I really think that oftentimes we make business too hard. We make
mm.
life too hard, and get confused with shiny objects. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that too. I think business owners, what makes us great is it's our Superman, but it's our kryptonite too. We're always trying new things, changing new things. But I think back to my grandfather, right? God rest his soul. I think he would be better in business today than younger people, right? Because he wouldn't have understood any of the technology, right? He wouldn't understand what a podcast was. He wouldn't understand what a smartphone was, but he understood what he was trying to do in his business, to serve
Mm,
people, to help them, to make the profit. So, if I would have gone to him and said, you don't have to go to the Lions Club or the Rotary Club or the country club anymore to talk to these little groups. You can get on a podcast, you can talk with Salim, and you can talk to tens of thousands of people around the world. He would have had no idea what a podcast was, but he would have known this can help my business.
mm. Great advice. And I love systematization, and it's often overlooked, it's often forgotten, the need for it, and making a business less owner dependent. Because I've yet to talk to a business owner that wants to have created a business that's going to suck them and going to consume them. And we create a business because it gives us freedom of time, freedom of financial freedom, autonomy, right? And we lose that if the business becomes owner dependent. And the only way that I've known to make a business less owner dependent is by creating systems, because systems live on.
Yeah,
And
in
they're
the military.
transferable. It's a skill. Anybody can use a system and look at a system and do the crank the product or service.
Yeah, if in the military we had a phrase that said "one is none," right? So if there's only one
Mm,
person that knows how to run the radio, we're in
mm,
trouble. And you look at
right,
that from a business. If there's only one person that knows how to do payroll, well, that
right,
person can never take a day off. If there's only one
right,
person that knows how to do something, you better pray that they never get sick or want a day off.
right, right. Wow, Tom, this was good. I really enjoyed it. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, we've done a lot of studying on this, Salim, and the best way that always works is to send people to one place, right? One place where they can find everything. I know you're listening, driving, multitasking, so I'll make a page
Mm,
just at interviewvalet.com straight talk. And I'll put a copy of my book there. If you want a free copy, you can get that there.
Oh, that's
There's an
great.
assessment, will podcast interview marketing work for me? And then, if you want to connect with me, I'll put my calendar there, all my social media, so you don't have to figure out which Tom Schwab in Kalamazoo I am. So all of that will be at interviewvalet.com/straight talk.
I love your system there. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Enjoyed
Thank you,
it.
Salim.
You take care.